Me and my girlfriend were on a romantic trip in Italy after some months of emotional distancing due to work. Then, on the final days, she suddenly wanted to stay without me to find herself despite the plan, so I cut her off financially and left. So here's the deal. Me and my girlfriend of 2 years. Before the whirlwind of my current job kicked in, life with Jay, that's my girlfriend, was pretty much like something out of a feel-good movie. We met at a friend's barbecue and clicked instantly. She had this easy laugh and a way of seeing the funny side of everything, which made every day a bit brighter. We spent countless evenings just walking through the park, cooking together, or binge-watching series. We were that couple, always holding hands, always planning the next fun thing. Back then, my work was steady, predictable 9 to 5 hours, so I always had ample time for us. But as things picked up at work, with me stepping into a more demanding role, our dynamics began to shift. It was subtle at first, missing a dinner date here, canceling plans there. I told myself that it was just a busy phase, that I'd regained control of my schedule. Jay was understanding too, always saying she got it, that work was important. But no matter how supportive she tried to be, I could tell it was wearing on her. The past 2 months have really highlighted how strained things have become. My new normal means more late nights, unexpected weekend calls, and constant emailing from home. We see less of each other, and when we do, the exhaustion and stress are palpable. What used to be our downtime has turned into brief, often silent meals with both of us glued to our phones. The intimacy that came so easily now feels like something we have to schedule, like another task on my to-do list. These changes have brewed undercurrents of resentment. Jay, once so laid back and jovial, now snaps over minor things like forgetting to buy milk or leaving a wet towel on the bed. We argue over these trivialities, but there's always an unspoken, heavier air, about time, about neglect. We haven't had a big blowout, nothing that dramatic. But there's this constant nagging feeling of drifting apart, like we're slowly losing grip on what made us. Us. Recognizing the toll my new job was taking on Jay and me, I knew something had to give. I could see the strain in her eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach as far as it used to. It was like watching the color fade from a vibrant painting. Guilt gnawed at me. A constant reminder that I wasn't there for her as much as I should be. She never complained much, but love doesn't need words to express when something's amiss. I decided to plan a vacation, something grand, a gesture to show Jay just how much she meant to me and to perhaps salvage what was becoming of our once effortless connection. Italy seemed like the perfect escape, with its romantic landscapes, rich history, and the promise of delicious food. It was somewhere Jay had mentioned wanting to visit back in our easier days. I imagined us wandering through the streets of Rome, riding a gondola in Venice, and sipping wine under the Tuscan sun, reclaiming the magic that we'd lost to routine and tired late-night apologies. I handled all the arrangements, secretly booking our flights and picking out the coziest hotels, aiming for a seamless, stress-free experience. When I finally told Jay about the trip, the surprise ignited a spark in her that I hadn't seen in months. The essence of Italy seeped into every moment of our trip, and it seemed each day offered a new adventure, a fresh opportunity to bridge the gap that had formed between us. One evening in Venice stands out vividly in my memory. We had booked a small boat to take us through the winding canals at dusk. The setting sun cast a warm golden glow over the ancient buildings, and the water mirrored the sky, turning our surroundings into a canvas of oranges and pinks. The boatman maneuvered us expertly under low bridges and alongside colorful, slightly tilting buildings. Jay and I sat close, our hands intertwined, the sounds of distant chatter and the gentle splash of water against the boat filling the air. There was a peace in that moment, a quiet contentment that I hadn't felt in months. She rested her head on my shoulder, and it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Another highlight was our romantic dinner in a quaint little restaurant in Rome, tucked away in a narrow alley lined with ivy-covered walls. The restaurant was Jay's find, a place she had read about in one of her travel blogs. We dined outside under a string of small lights, the atmosphere buzzing with the soft murmur of other diners and the clink of glasses. We indulged in a meal of fresh pasta drizzled with a truffle sauce that was nothing short of divine, paired with a bottle of local red wine recommended by our waiter. Jay's eyes sparkled under the fairy lights as we talked about plans for the future, about places we still wanted to see, and about starting fresh when we got back home. For a few hours, it felt like we had recaptured the magic of our early days together, laughing and sharing stories with an ease that I had sorely missed. These moments, so full of promise and rediscovery, made the sudden shift on our last day all the more jarring. As we stood on that cliff in Naples, with the vast blue sea stretching out before us, I couldn't help but feel like the picturesque scene was mocking us, presenting a stark contrast to the turmoil that was unfolding between us. Someone's life can't really be like that. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Out of nowhere, Jay told me she needed more time here in Italy without me. She told me she wants to stay longer to find herself and think about our relationship without me. I was stunned. There was no lead-up, no conversation about feeling constrained or unhappy. Not like this. Until that moment, I thought we were healing, getting better, finding our way back to each other. But her words made it clear she felt differently. She hadn't planned this with me. Hadn't even hinted at needing more space until that instant. It felt like a betrayal, not just of the plans we'd made together, but of the progress I thought we'd been making. I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me, anger, confusion, but mostly a deep, unsettling sadness. Here I was, thinking we were mending our relationship, while she was apparently still questioning everything about us. The idea of leaving her there in a foreign country tore at me, but so did the feeling of being so unexpectedly pushed away. It was supposed to be our trip, our time to reconnect, and now it was ending with her choosing to stay behind to continue without me. This wasn't just a small hiccup. It felt like a seismic shift in what I thought our future was going to look like. The conversation escalated quickly from her initial bombshell. Standing there, overlooking the Mediterranean, the salt air mixing with the tension between us, I struggled to keep my composure. I needed to respond, to say something, because silence would just be acceptance and agreement to her sudden plan, without any consideration of what it meant for both of us. So, as calmly as I could muster, I addressed the financial side of her decision, a decision she had made alone, but one that would affect us both. Jay, I began, trying to keep my voice even. I want to support you in finding whatever it is you're looking for, but if this is something you need to do alone, then I think it's only fair you take on the financial responsibility for it too. I explained that the trip, as planned, was something I could prepare for, budget for. But extending it was beyond what I had anticipated. As Jay's voice grew louder against the backdrop of the cliffside, her words cut through the gentle hum of the waves below. The tension was palpable, and her accusations stung deep. How can you just cut me off like this? Is this how you show your love, by holding money over my head? Her eyes, usually so warm and inviting, now flashed with a mixture of frustration and desperation. I tried to keep my own emotions in check, to respond without escalating the situation further. Jay, this isn't about money, I replied, my voice steady but filled with emotion. It's about us, about commitment. When you say you need to stay longer without me, it feels like there's something more, something you're not saying. The accusation stung. This wasn't about money, not really. It was about boundaries, respect for the decisions we were supposed to make together. This trip was meant to be a gesture of healing, not a gateway to a unilateral decision that left me both financially and emotionally overextended. She looked away, her eyes scanning the horizon. I could see the gears turning, her mind wrestling with the implications of her desires versus the realities of our relationship. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unsaid things and unresolved emotions. I took a deep breath, trying to read between the lines of what she wasn't quite saying. The idea of her needing time alone here now seemed to point to something more than just soul-searching. "Jay, are you telling me everything?" I asked gently, hoping to coax out what was really on her mind. We ended the conversation with no real resolution, the issue hanging over us like a dark cloud. She was hurt, feeling unsupported in her moment of need for independence. I was confused and upset, feeling like the partner left holding the pieces while she sought something I couldn't give her. On those cliffs, we spent our last night in Italy in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, wondering what the next step would be for a relationship that had just faced one of its toughest tests. When I returned from Italy, the tension between Jay and me hadn't eased, but the addition of our friends' opinions only magnified the stress. It started with a few offhand comments during a group video call. When one of our mutual friends, Mark, mentioned hearing about our little disagreement in Italy, the word choice felt minimizing. And the discussion quickly spiraled from there. "Dude, you left her stranded in Italy? That's harsh," Mark said, shaking his head, his tone more accusatory than concerned. Another friend, Lisa, chimed in. "Yeah, I get that you're upset, but cutting her off financially? That seems a bit extreme." Their words stung. Here were people who knew us both, who knew our dynamics and the struggles we'd been facing lately, yet it seemed they only saw the situation from one side, Jay's. They weren't there to see the confusion and hurt in my eyes when she told me she wanted to stay behind. They didn't feel the weight of betrayal that I felt when my efforts to mend our relationship were met with a sudden demand for space and independence. I tried to explain my side, to tell them how blindsided I was, how we had planned this trip together as a couple, and how her sudden decision felt like a step away from everything we were supposed to be working on. "It's not about the money," I insisted. "It's about being left out of a major decision that affects both of us. It's about feeling like I'm not a partner, but a provider, to be switched on and off." But the conversation didn't go far. Their minds seemed made up, and the more I tried to justify my stance, the more defensive I sounded, which only seemed to validate their criticisms. The call ended with a heavy silence, and I was left feeling isolated, not just from Jay, but from my friends too. This rift made me question a lot of things, not just my relationship with Jay, but also my friendships. It felt like they were quick to judge without understanding the full complexity of the situation, or maybe, I wondered, had I failed to communicate the depth of my feelings effectively? Either way, I felt cornered and misunderstood, caught between defending my boundaries and appearing uncaring to the people whose opinions mattered to me. It was a precarious balance, trying to maintain my stance while navigating the disapproval of friends I had once relied on for support. Update: Wow, I can't believe my situation got so much of your attention. Well, thank you for all of your advice. A month had dragged by since Jay decided to extend her stay in Italy, a decision that stretched the fabric of our relationship to its limits. The weeks were marked by a strained exchange of messages, brief, cold, and sometimes days apart. I had hoped the distance might bring some perspective, perhaps soften the edges of the conflict we had left simmering. Yet, as her return approached, a knot of anxiety grew within me, tightening with each passing day. She didn't call to let me know she was coming. I simply heard the key turn in the lock of our apartment. The sound, once a signal of comfort, now struck a chord of apprehension. As she stepped inside, the air shifted, heavy with the weight of unspoken grievances and pent-up frustrations. She looked different, tired, yes, but there was also a hard set to her jaw, an armor she had donned during her time away. The door barely closed behind her before the storm broke. "How could you just cut me off like that?" Jay's voice was sharp, her words singing through the tense air. Her bags dropped to the floor with a thud, mirroring the heavy drop of my heart. "I had not cut you off financially without a warning," I replied, trying to keep my tone level despite the rising tide of emotion. "I said if you decided to stay longer, you need to manage without my financial support. You made that choice, not me. You left me stranded in a foreign country," she exclaimed, her face flushed with anger. The moment she saw me, the accusation felt like a slap, harsh and unfounded. It was the breaking point. After weeks of built-up tension and uncertainty. I didn't leave you stranded, Jay. You chose to stay. We had a return ticket already booked, I retorted, my voice rising to match hers. I felt betrayed, not just by her decision to extend her stay without discussing it with me, but now by her twisting of the facts. It was as if the careful plans I had made, meant to bring us closer, had been forgotten, discarded, like an inconvenient truth. The argument spiraled quickly. Jay paced back and forth in the living room. Each step seemed to echo her escalating frustration. You could have supported me, understood that I needed more time, she argued, throwing her hands up in exasperation. And you could have talked to me about it, I shot back. The gap in our perspectives seemed insurmountable. I had envisioned our discussion as a chance to air our grievances and seek understanding, perhaps even find a way to mend the rift between us. Instead, it turned into a volley of accusations and hurt feelings. As we argued, the hurt became palpable, filling the space between us with words and silences equally heavy. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were inching closer with each passing moment of our disagreement. I could see the strain in her eyes, mirroring my own fatigue. It was draining, this dance of stubbornness and pride, and it hurt more because it was with Jay, the person I had once been so in sync with. Finally, with neither of us willing to budge, Jay grabbed her bag and keys. I can't do this right now, she said, her voice breaking a little. I need some space to think, away from here. Without another word, she left the apartment to stay with a friend. The door closed with a definitive thud, marking the physical and emotional distance now fully imposed between us. The weeks following Jay's departure from our apartment were a haze of confusion and melancholy. I tried to keep myself busy, diving into work and avoiding our mutual friends as much as possible. Not ready to face the questions or the pitying looks. It was during one of these long evenings, as I was leaving the office later than usual, that I ran into Ben. A close friend who had always been more like a brother to me. Hey man, Ben greeted me, his expression uneasy, as if he was wrestling with something he wasn't sure he should say. We decided to grab a coffee, finding ourselves seated across from each other in a quiet cafe that was almost closing for the night. The low buzz of the few remaining patrons gave a semblance of privacy. Ben hesitated, stirring his coffee slowly. Look, I wasn't going to say anything at first. I thought it wasn't my place. And maybe it isn't. But he trailed off, looking up at me with a serious expression. I heard from me. She's close with one of Jay's friends. You know that Jay's been, well, she borrowed quite a bit of money from friends and relatives back when she was in Italy. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Borrowed money? The Jay I knew was financially prudent to a fault. Ben continued. Yeah, and there's more. They said she partied a lot over there and got pretty wild. He paused, the weight of his next words hanging between us. She met someone, something happened. And now she's back here, and she's pregnant. The news hit me like a physical blow, each word a punch that knocked the wind out of me. Pregnant? My mind raced as I tried to piece together the fragments of this new, jarring reality, but Ben wasn't done. There's talk that she's planning to make a scene, to claim the kid is yours. To get you to take responsibility. I was stunned into silence, the coffee in front of me growing cold. It felt surreal. Like a plot from one of those overly dramatic TV shows Jay and I used to watch together and criticize for being too unrealistic. But this was real, and it was happening to me. Why would she do this? I finally managed to ask, my voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. I don't know, man, Ben replied, shaking his head. Maybe she's desperate. Maybe she's not thinking straight. But I thought you should know from someone who cares about you. I think, Ben, my mind a whirlwind of emotions as I left the cafe. The night air felt colder as I walked home. the streets empty and echoing with the footsteps of my solitary return. Betrayal, confusion, hurt, it was all there, building up a storm inside me. What was I going to do? How could I confront Jay about this? The trust we had built over years seemed to crumble in an instant, leaving me to navigate the debris of our shared past and an uncertain, possibly contentious future. The days following my conversation with Ben were a blur of sleepless nights and distracted days. The seed of doubt he had planted grew into an overwhelming tangle of suspicion and uncertainty. Was Jay really planning to betray me so profoundly, or was this all some kind of misunderstanding? I needed answers, and I needed them before Jay could make any moves. I started with our mutual friends, casually bringing up Jay in conversations to gauge their reactions. I'd steer the topic towards our relationship, watching carefully for any sign of discomfort or evasion that might suggest they knew more than they were letting on. Despite my efforts, nothing substantial came out of these interactions. It was as if Ben's story was an echo in a void, leaving me even more isolated with my worries. Frustrated but not deterred, I decided to take a more direct approach with someone who would know the truth, Kay, one of Jay's closest friends. She has always been honest with me, ever since. She wasn't one to mince words or shield her thoughts behind polite facades. If anyone would tell me the truth, it would be her. I reached out to Kay under the guise of needing advice about how to repair things with Jay, a pretext that wasn't entirely false. We met at a small cafe. One of those cozy places with a comforting buzz that makes it easier to open up. As we sat down with our coffee, the casual start quickly shifted as I probed deeper. Kay, I've heard some things, and I just want to understand what's going on with Jay. I began, my voice steady, but my hands betraying me with their slight tremor. I watched Kay's face closely, her expression changing from friendly concern to a more guarded weariness. What have you heard? She asked, her tone cautious yet curious. I hesitated, then decided to lay it all out. That I might be trying to trap me makes me believe that I'm responsible for a situation that I had no part in creating. That she might be expecting, but the circumstances aren't what they seem. Kay's demeanor shifted as she continued, her eyes still fixed somewhere outside the window, perhaps finding it easier than meeting my gaze directly in such a difficult moment. And there's something else you should know, she added, turning back to look at me, her expression a mix of sympathy and resolve. After Jay realized she was pregnant, she panicked. Given everything, she didn't know how to handle it, so she got a paternity test done just to be sure. You know? Kay's voice was steady, but her hands fidgeted with the coffee cup in front of her. The results came back, and you are not the father. She was shocked, and well, the Italian guy is out of the picture now. Kay paused, giving me a moment to absorb the news as my final hope for the child could be mine faded away. This was a lot to process. Jay had sought confirmation, had gotten it, and yet here we were. She's really scared. She doesn't know what to do next, and I think in her panic, she thought maybe turning to you would somehow fix things. Maybe she thought the baby could be yours, and that would make everything easier for her to manage. Kay looked genuinely pained to be delivering such news. Her loyalty to Jay strained against her moral compass to tell the truth. I'm telling you this because I think you deserve the whole picture. It's a mess, I know, but Jay is really struggling with what to do next. She's mentioned wanting your help, not just financially, but also emotionally. Maybe hoping that there was a chance this situation could bring you back together. It's not fair to you, and I thought you should know the truth before anything went further. Sitting back, I tried to process everything Kay had laid out. The complexity of Jay's actions, driven by fear and a desperate grasp for stability, was overwhelming. The paternity results only added another layer of betrayal and sadness to the situation. It wasn't just about the breach of our relationship now. It was also about the impact of her decisions on an innocent life. Thanks, Kay, for being honest with me, I said finally, finding my voice after a long silence. This changes a lot. I need some time to think about all of this, about what I want to do, and how I can handle this situation without making things worse for anyone involved. Kay nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. Of course. Take all the time you need. If you want to talk more or if you need anything, I'm here. As I left the cafe, the cool air felt sharp as I breathed it in. The news had not only clarified, but also complicated the situation further. Now more than ever, it was crucial to approach the next steps with careful thought and consideration for all parties involved, especially the unborn child caught in the middle of this turmoil. I wasn't sure what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront Jay immediately, to demand explanations and perhaps to hear her side of the story, however painful it might be. Another part of me wanted to retreat, to process the hurt, and to protect myself from further pain. Every logical step I could take from here, seeking legal advice, preparing for potential disputes. Distancing myself from Jay seemed cold and clinical, far removed from the emotional charge raging inside me. By the time I reached my apartment, the sun had set, and the early evening darkness felt fitting, mirroring the uncertainty that lay ahead. The decision of what to do next loomed large, daunting in its significance. As I turned my key in the lock, the familiar sound seemed strangely foreign, as if even my sense of home was questioning where I belong. Inside, the quiet of my apartment was a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts in my mind. I sat down alone, with the echo of Kay's last words stretching out before me. After 3 days of agonizing over everything, I decided it was time to face Jay. I needed clarity and closure, no matter how painful the conversation was going to be. I texted her, asking if we could meet at the little coffee shop where we'd spent countless lazy Sunday afternoons together. It felt like a neutral place, public yet intimate, appropriate for the kind of serious conversation we needed to have. She was already there when I arrived, her eyes red-rimmed. A clear sign she'd been crying. As I sat down opposite her, the air felt heavy with all the things left unsaid between us. I know everything, Jay. I started, trying to keep my voice calm despite the turmoil inside me. I know about the guy in Italy, the pregnancy, and your plan to make me believe I could be the father. Her face crumpled at my words. I was so confused, she managed to say, her voice a whisper. I thought maybe if you thought the baby was yours, we could go back to how things were. The hurt was palpable, stinging fresh like a wound reopened. Jay, we can't go back. Trust doesn't work that way, I replied, feeling a strange mix of anger and pity. And I can't just overlook this. It's too big. There was a long pause, filled only by the soft murmur of other patrons and the clink of coffee cups. Finally, I took a deep breath and continued. I've decided I'll help you clear your debts from the trip. It's the last thing I can do for you, out of whatever love and care is left. Jay started sobbing, her shoulders shaking. It was tough to watch, knowing how deeply intertwined our lives had been, but after that, we go our separate ways, I added. It's for the best. Helping her financially was a decision I made. Not just out of mercy for her, but as a way to free myself too, from guilt, from the what-ifs, and from a relationship that had become too fractured to mend. As hard as it was, I knew it was the right step toward healing, toward not letting this situation keep a hold on me any longer. As I stood up to leave, the finality of the moment sunk in. Jay was a significant part of my life, but it was clear that chapter had to close. Walking out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off me, a sorrowful relief, knowing that this was a necessary end for both of us to move forward. As I reflect on the journey I've shared with you all here, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone who took the time to comment and offer their support and advice. Your words have been a beacon during a tumultuous time, guiding me through moments of doubt and encouraging me when the path seemed too difficult to navigate alone. The wisdom shared in the comments was not only invaluable in helping me make informed decisions, but also provided comfort in knowing that I was not alone in this struggle. Many of you shared your own stories, which reminded me that life's trials are universal, yet they also bring us together in understanding and solidarity. I am especially grateful for those who reminded me to stay true to my values and to approach this situation with integrity and compassion. Your reminders to protect my emotional well-being and seek professional advice were crucial in navigating the complexities of this situation. Thank you too for the reminders about self-care and the encouragement to look forward after difficult choices. These messages help me maintain perspective and focus on healing. To everyone who commented, your support has made a real difference in my life during this challenging time. I am moving forward with a renewed sense of purpose and hope, buoyed by the kindness and wisdom of this community. Thank you for being a part of my journey. So yeah, like the title says, we were both remote workers and decided that we could van life and see things while still working. We lasted about a month. And last week he flipped out over the way I sipped my coffee and told me I had to leave. I thought he meant like we would pack up and figure out how to get me home. No, he meant I needed to get out. With all my stuff, in the middle of a state park in New Mexico and figure it out. I was scared and pissed, so I hurriedly packed everything and got out. A very nice older couple had heard the screaming and saw me with a pile of my stuff and asked if I needed help. I said yes. And they said they would drive me to Albuquerque in their RV and we could figure out what would happen next. Well, it turns out they are the sweetest people ever. And we eventually came to the conclusion it would be easier for me to travel with them home to Kansas. They've now allowed me to stay, paying them insanely fair rent, food, etc. I just have to edit the wife's book and help the husband with his guitar playing. Well, it turns out in the hurry of packing, I grabbed my ex's watch that was his dad's. I got in touch with him and told him I was sorry. It was truly an accident, and I had no intention of keeping it. How would he like me to get it to him? He said I needed to meet him in Utah. I said that was ridiculous. I could send it to him. He said that it was too valuable to trust to mail or FedEx and needed to be hand-relieved. I said I was in Kansas and not coming to Utah, but I would return the watch to his brother when I go home in March. He said no, the only solution was for me to drive it to him. I said I didn't even have a car. He said, "You're probably half of Lawrence. Use one of theirs." At that point I blocked him. The watch is pretty valuable and has a lot of sentimental value, and I will return it. It was my oversight that I have it in the first place. What are my obligations to follow his instructions to get the watch back to him? Edit. Wow, this blew up. For the people asking, it is a lower-end Rolex watch. It still has all the original box and even the receipt when his dad bought it, but it was well worn, so he's never been sure how much it's worth. I guess a few hundred. Maybe 1,000, so I'm not sure. I'm not going to keep it or destroy it since it's not mine in any way. Top comments. Comment 1. You gave reasonable options. Let's say he files a police report that you stole it. You have proof that you contacted him and asked where you could send it. He declined. Comment 2. Dude sounds like a psychopath. Do not, under any circumstances, willingly meet up with him in person ever again. Don't let him know where you live. This douchery is a sign of something being very off. And you don't want to be there again when he short circuits. Again, you were extremely lucky to have found the people you did. Who knows where you'd be if that had not happened? Update. So I posted exactly a week ago, link below, but the short story was I was van living with my ex-boyfriend. He kicked me out after a temper tantrum, and I caught a ride with some awesome people. I discovered I had an ex's dad's watch that had lots of sentimental value. I told him, asked where I should send it. He demanded I drive from Kansas to Utah and return it, even though I don't have a car. Well, so lots of mixed advice, but most people said the best option was to contact his brother. Before I did that, I decided to unblock my ex just to give him one more chance to give me an address where I could ship the watch. Actual text conversation. Me, hey, I'm sorry I blocked you. I just didn't appreciate the insults, but I want to get your dad's watch back. Can you let me know where to send it? I'll pay for shipping, no problem. Less than 30 seconds later. Him. I stashed the watch in your bag because I wanted to prove to myself what an awful person you are and do a good job at proving me right again. I was like, wow. So many people in the original post said that he probably put the watch in my stuff as I was packing in order to force communication and force the opportunity to see him again. Well, you were exactly correct. I didn't even respond to his text and blocked him again. I have no intention of keeping the watch, so I decided now it was time to contact his brother, who, along with his wife, has always been very nice to me. He was super appreciative, and we spent a couple of days going back and forth figuring out the shipping, but the watch arrived to him on Friday. And all is good. He even Venmo'd me $1,000 for being so honest, contacting him, etc. I make really good money, so I told him it wasn't necessary at all, but he insisted. So we agreed to donate it to a food pantry here in Lawrence. But I'm still so creeped out thinking about the day when he kicked me out of the van and he was screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names, and he was planning to stay in touch with me. He was slamming all my stuff into bags, but that was cover for him hiding the watch. The fact that it was so deliberate, yet he thought of it so quickly, is so scary to me. We got along so well before we left, and he always seemed like such a great guy. I don't know if the confined space of the van is too much for any couple or if it brought out a side of him I didn't know was there. Makes me sad and scared at the same time, but relieved it's over. Relevant comments. Comment 1. He framed you to prove to himself that you were awful. He's dumb enough to fall for his own framed job. I really truly can't wrap my head around how stupid he must be. Comment 2. What I don't get is his logic that this would prove Opie is a bad person. How the hell was she supposed to know about the watch when you kicked her ass out in a state she didn't know about it until after she got to safety, possibly thousands of miles away? Like, you thought she was just going to be running back to you. That dude. Comment 3. I think, in his bat-hit crazy mind, she was bad to not instantly head to Utah to return it. He's clearly insane. Underscore 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 underscore. Now for the next story. Story 2. The son's behavior is starting to creep me out. But I'm not sure if it's actually inappropriate, or just a cultural difference. Original post. Hey there, using a throwaway just in case. So I'm from the US, and recently moved to Italy to be a nanny. I feel this is important because, so far, I have not been able to tell if I'm struggling with a cultural difference here in Italy or if I actually have reason to be weirded out. It is easy to tell that the son, Dario, is in middle school as he is already several inches taller than me and his mom and has maybe 30 pounds on me. When I first got here, some of the stuff that freaked me out a little, I could handle, and I chalked it up to being an Italy thing. This includes stuff like talking almost exclusively in a baby voice when addressing his parents, calling his parents mommy and daddy, fighting physically with his little sister over who gets to sit on mom and dad's lap multiple times throughout the day, fighting with the sister over who gets to sleep with the parents, getting extremely upset when mom or dad leaves for the day, and whining about not getting enough kisses or time, laying in bed kissing with mom, and having his parents blow unchewed food in his mouth because it's too hot. Now, I really don't want to be critical of this if it's normal here, but in the US, I seriously can't imagine a single 7th grade boy engaging in any of these behaviors, so it's really new to me. And really, it hadn't affected me, so I just let it be. The problem is, though, that now I'm starting to get involved, and it's making me really uncomfortable. For example, our rooms have adjacent windows, which allows the kids to see into my entire room at all times. To me, this is pretty inappropriate. What am I supposed to do when I need to change clothes? But I also don't want to seem like I am sexualizing children or accusing them of anything. So I just politely asked for curtains and took to changing in the bathroom after weeks without curtains. The family finally promised me that someone was coming to put them up. Well, he only put them in the kids' room. Ever since then, I find Dario peeping through the curtains at me multiple times a day. Now I'm sure he is just checking on me or curious about what I'm up to. But it makes me so uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell the family, though, because I'm afraid they would think I was accusing their baby of trying to spy on me changing. So I just took matters into my own hands and hung a blanket up over my window. Another issue has been when we stay at the kids' grandparents' house. There's a room for the parents with a bed for one child, and a room for me with a bed for one child. I figured we would split up boys and girls and I would stay with the daughter. But nighttime rolls around, and Dario is crawling into the bed next to mine. I was so uncomfortable, I could hardly sleep. I have talked to my friends at home about this, and they all think it's really weird because we aren't related, and he's a teenager now. But this is, of course, an American opinion. So I can't tell for sure if we're imposing our ideas on this family. Again, if this is really a cultural thing, though, I don't know how to tell the family that where I'm from. It's kind of inappropriate for a boy so old to be sleeping next to me, especially when he's been spying on me lately, without causing issues. Of course, these behaviors affect other aspects of our life as well, as it is hard to get Dario to do anything because he usually claims it's too hard to do. Making a bed? Too hard. Are you kidding? And I often find myself wanting to tell him to grow up. What I need help with is knowing whether he does need to grow up or if all this behavior is normal here. And I'm the crazy American that needs to adjust. Is this behavior normal for a 12-year-old, or is it immature? I feel like the parents still really see him as a young child, and usually he acts like it. But for the most part, it seems like he plays up the baby act because he knows it makes his parents cater to him more. If this all is abnormal, does anyone have any suggestions about how to bring this up to the family? Edit. Just want to clarify that at the grandparents' house, there are 2 beds and they are next to each other. Dario was not in my bed, but in the bed next to mine. TLDR, I am a nanny for a boy 13M, whose behavior makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure if he is actually being inappropriate, or if there is just a large cultural difference between my home country and this country. Relevant comments. The freaky behavior is normal for a spoiled 13-year-old. Of course, most adolescents would want to peek at you through the curtains. The problem is the parents. They have to stop that right now. Don't you have authority as a nanny to scold him? I'm Spanish. We have a very similar culture to Italy, and that is inappropriate. The parents are educating a horrible child that will grow up to be one that thinks the world should cater to him. Oh my goodness, the relief I am feeling right now to know that this isn't normal. So far, I have not particularly felt like I have much authority because the times I would scold him, the parents are sitting right there, and how can I reprimand him in front of his own parents? I didn't include this in the post, but he is already showing major signs of being an A***** hole. He's always so rude, critical, and ungrateful. Every meal I make, he has something to insult about it. He treats his little sister like sh**t, even though she is a doll and often acts more mature than him. And he loves ordering me around and telling me what I'm doing wrong. It drives me up the wall. B186, we've established this kid's behavior is weird, but WTF at the parents responding to your request for privacy, i.e., curtains, by giving them to the child. OP, I have no clue. They've been really weird about some stuff like this. It's TMI, but the mom knew I was on my period because I had to ask her where to buy tampons here, and we got to the house. And there's no trash can in the bathroom, or in my room. I asked for one multiple times, and she said she would get one and never did. And when I asked last, she said, well, the kids have a trash can in their room if you need it. Like WTF? Are you not an adult woman? Do you not understand how this works? Do the parents discipline the kids? I asked about discipline when I interviewed, and they said they don't really have to discipline the kids. I should have taken it as a warning sign, honestly. The mom is very strict about some stuff. So they're very good in certain areas that she deems important, etiquette, cleanliness. But when Dario picks on the daughter, they just let the kids yell and scream and cry until I step in. They also seem to encourage many of Dario's rude comments because technically he does word them politely. For example, I will bust my ass making a meal for the whole family to be kind and helpful. It is not in my job description, and Dario will eat 4 plates of it and then say, I'm sorry. But why would you cook this like that? And I'll say, that's how we cook it in the US. And he'll say, well, I didn't like it, the Italian way is much better. And then put his plate on mine for me to take it to the kitchen and leave. No thanks for cooking, no. But I did like this part. Just insult. Clean my plate. Bye. He loves to criticize. Is the child autistic? I thought about the autism initially, but I'm fairly certain it isn't that because when his parents are gone, the baby act completely turns off. And he acts like any other teenager, albeit manipulative and critical I have ever known, and I have worked in child care in the classroom and as a coach for years now. Update. Hi all, I'm back. Yesh. How long has it been? 3-4 months later with an update. Long story short, I quit. Here's the long version for those interested. The curtain issue, like I said in my last post. I had just hung a blanket for privacy, and since then, there have been no peeping issues. I asked 2 more times for curtains and was reassured both times that the curtain man would come to hang them in my room. He did come back once and hung more curtains in the kids' room, but again, not in mine. Then I was told that they didn't like him, and would be finding another curtain guy to hang my curtains. It's been 4 months. No more mention of it. I still use the blanket. The vacation issue. I have simply refused to go on vacation with them. I'm off on weekends. And I've reached a point where I just refuse to be home for the entire weekend and manage not to see them from Friday night until Monday morning if I can help it. I go on weekend trips. Crash on couches, sneak into my room when they're eating, things like that, just to avoid seeing anyone on my days off. The Dario issue. Dario still acts extremely immaturely. I've warmed up to him a lot, and I figured out how to cut his rudeness and such. He's become a lot more positive and kind, especially because his mom has been gone a lot and he's with me every day. I'm very upbeat and have worked really hard to get him to socialize and speak kindly. Unfortunately, he seems to have almost regressed in terms of his childish behavior. He still sits on laps, kisses a lot, and sleeps with the parent when the other is gone. The baby talk is constant. Constant. For example, he loves to repeat back butchered syllables of words, if that makes sense. Like, his dad will say, Pazum and Cucho. Pass me a spoon, and he will clap and exclaim, Io! Or, Voy del aqua. Do you want water? And he'll go, Qua qua. He also has started eating kind of like a baby, too. Like, he'll take the remaining tomato sauce that we used on pasta and use the giant spoon to drink it out of the pot and get it all over his face and then suck on each of his fingers. But when I look at his parents, they're looking at him like when you see a cute baby trying to use a fork and getting food on his face. But he's 13, so it's honestly sickening to watch and listen to. He won't lock the door when he goes to the bathroom or showers. Why? I started locking the door when I was like 7. And he even cried the other day when his sister sat on the foot of his bed. He doesn't like things touching his bed, and guess what? The parents got mad at the daughter, said it was her fault for baiting him. She just had to tie her shoe for a second and declared that it's her fault. Dario will be upset all night. He also hasn't made any progress with friends and has taken to playing League of Legends, so he won't leave his room or do any activities or lessons with me or the sister. It's pretty sad, honestly. Basically, the hardest part of this whole thing has been the mother. I won't even go into it here, but she's honestly clinically insane. And I feel so bad for all the people in this house that have to put up with her. She's just a power-hungry, jealous, bitter woman who needs to see a professional. Basically, I went home for Christmas to be with my friends and family, and realized how bad this experience was for my health. I was going out drinking almost every night to escape the house. I was sleeping horribly because I knew she was here, and her presence gave me awful anxiety. I was getting yelled at every day, even when I did nothing wrong. I was at home in the States, and the thought of going back made me absolutely miserable. So when I came back, I told them I needed to go back early for medical reasons, not totally untrue. And now I'm set to leave the last week of March. They found a new girl. Look out for her post here sometime in the future. Dario is still acting like a baby. The mom is still crazy, and I quit. Homies, get me out of here. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.